Continue now with our special focus on crime against children on the AM report. Having to deal with crime at a young age has its own impact on victims as well, and of course on those working with those victims. Let's try and make sense of this for you now. Bring in Molo Songololo's director, Patric Solomons, who's worked with children as well as the many issues they face in this country. Patric, great to see you once again on the AM report. Thanks so much indeed for speaking to us. And we don't really give much time or focus to this aspect of the kind of issues that children face, do we? I mean, when we speak about crimes committed by children, in many instances, what do you reckon ought to be the approach? Because unlike in many other instances where the perpetrator is an adult, dealing with this type of problem, for lack of a better term, I guess would need a specific type of approach, wouldn't it?
Yes, it's of course very shocking, the recent case of a mother killing her children, and it's quite devastating. And for the family members, it's just unimaginable how they are coping with that. And we have seen already, many families completely they're devastated when a child dies. But when a child dies, it's at the hands of someone who's supposed to be the carer, someone who's supposed to protect them, someone who's supposed to be nurturing them. That is quite shocking. And it really shakes the family who's affected by that kind of murder of a child, of a family member. And so it's a lifelong devastation that they experience. We have come across children who have experienced death in their own families, and it affects them throughout their lives. We have children who particularly are affected psychologically by it. The fear that someone might kill them stays with them forever. And then, of course, also the fear that someone in their family, could be capable of doing something like that. It just completely breaks children. Mm. And then, of course, also, why do people do this to children? Right. Unfortunately, children are weak. And in a case like this, for example, it's not very easy to pinpoint it. But mothers and fathers who kill their children because they believe it's in the best interest of the children. Sometimes their ideas and why they are driven to kill their children is inconsistent with reality, for example. It can also be because they don't want the children. The children are unwanted for whatever reason. And then, of course, a small percentage of that is because of an accidental reason, right? It happened, it was an accident. And then, of course, also parents kill children because of revenge, spousal revenge. We've seen a lot of men do that. But it's very interesting that from the stats that we see, it's about almost 50-50 women and men who kill their own children.
That's interesting, because what I was going to ask you is whether we know if the reasons why mothers and fathers would commit such crimes are any different. And the sense I'm getting from you is that there's actually no way of telling, or at least it's not divided along the gender divide, is it?
Yeah, that is correct. It appears from international stats and also local stats, although it's not very, very clear locally because we don't have a good, analysis of our stats. But there's more men who kill their children than women. So it's almost 50-50, but the men are more. And I think women, go through a different kind of stress and anxiety when they experience challenges in their lives. And a lot of the challenges that women experience in their lives is because of violence, for example, because of rape, pregnant because of rape, for example, because of economic stress, and being abandoned by the fathers of their children, for example. And then, of course, also because of family pressure. There's a lot of families that pressure on women in terms of them having children. Sometimes women are being evicted from their own homes because they're having children. And then, of course, also there's situations where if the father dies, if the husband dies, then someone else from the family comes into the home, like a brother or an uncle, who then take over and they claim, ownership over the mother and the children. But those are all kinds of things that impact on why women decide eventually that in the children's best interest to kill them.
Sure.
That is often one of the things that we find in the work that we do, and we've come across children who have experienced, killing of siblings by family members, and that appears either by accident or they were in the crossfire of a gun or stabbing that happened, or it was because it was perceived to be in their best interest. And it's very difficult to monitor this because this normally happens in the privacy of a home, and also a lot of it happens while children are sleeping, or the children are given a substance to put them to sleep, and then either a violent act committed on them. In this case, I believe a hammer was used, where they were completely brutalized, and the unspeakable trauma that they experienced.
Yeah.
So when siblings, in cases where there are surviving siblings, they often find it very difficult to cope with exactly what happened.
Absolutely.
Sometimes parents and family members often keep the details, exactly what happened, away from very young children. Because it can affect them very, very
without a doubt.
negatively.
Sure.
In the future as well.
Absolutely. And part of the work that's going to be undertaken by many people, including, I guess, just ordinary South Africans who are blown away by what's taken place, is to try and get into the mind of the 32-year-old mother in order to ascertain what would drive someone to do something like that, not only to one of their children, but to 4 of them. And to get there, many might say, and I'm sure you agree, it's not something that happens overnight. There must have been signs. There must have been things to look out for. And I wonder whether you reckon there's stuff that people should be looking out for when they suspect that any mother might be in distress to the point where they feel like they have no other choice but to do this.
Yeah, it's very difficult because we don't have much research in this area. But I think there are some kind of indicators that we can look at. A mother or father who's very overprotective over their children, a mother or father who keeps the children away from other family members, right? A mother or father who express certain kind of, thoughts about, that children live in a health kind of situation, in a bad situation, who have very sort of inconsistent ideas about reality, who might even express very strong opinions about what is right and what is wrong, and based on religious ideas that might indicate that there is a cause for concern. And then, of course, also in situations where parents, mothers or fathers, seemingly, conducting behaviors which are risk-taking behavior, putting children in sort of harm's way, for example. Then, of course, also another indicator could be limiting the movements of children. It's an unnecessary reason why the movements of children are being restricted. Those could all be signs. But it's very difficult because if you look at some of those things, nowadays a lot of parents, are overprotective over children because of the high levels of violence that we have outside our homes, in our streets, in our communities. So it's also very difficult. What we have been doing of late, because of the work that we do with children who's been traumatized because of sexual violence or rape cases or sexual exploitation cases, is we do a lot of home visits. And we find that with the home visits, we get a better idea of what is actually happening, who are the person or persons in the home who are able or capable of supporting the child, providing some level of care and protection to the child, especially when parents are very dysfunctional, or alcoholics or drug addicts, have abandoned their responsibilities towards their children. We normally look for someone close to the family, living with the family, or in the backyard, or next door, who can support that child. And that helps us to identify the risk for children, the vulnerabilities that is there, and then we can make interventions. And I think if we do more of that kind of thing, we will be able to detect better whether a child is in need of care and protection.
One certainly hopes we get this right, especially when you consider what's at stake. Patric Solomons, for now, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Really do appreciate your time this morning on the AM Report. Patric is the director for an organization called Molo, which works with many children and their plight in this country.